This is probably the majority. So if you think of this kind of the bell curve, right? And you think about the bell curve, the outliers I find in the military at least are, the highly competent agents that do everything right, don't have confirmation bias, are actually looking for evidence of innocence and go in with an open mind to try to prove or disprove a case. They're the outliers. The dirty cops who are, doing things wrong, intentionally, contaminating crime scenes, even planting evidence, which we had in the last trial I did, they're the outliers as well. But you have to know how to recognize those and how to deal with those. But the majority of the law enforcement agents I deal with are competent, but they have confirmation bias. If you don't understand what confirmation bias is, look it up. It is incredibly dangerous. And what I mean by that is it is the guilty till proven innocent mindset. So let's take a look at a sexual assault case. Let's say you have someone come in and you have two Marines and they were, out drinking at a bar. They both got drunk. They hooked up back in the barracks. And then the next morning, one of the Marines doesn't remember everything that happened that night. Maybe they were blacked out, or maybe their boyfriend or husband found out, whatever the potential motive to fabricate is. They say, well, I couldn't have consented because I was blacked out and you're not the type of Marine I would hook up with anyways. But we all know alcohol makes you do some crazy stuff. Alcohol makes you do things you wouldn't otherwise do. Typically, you don't end up on, waking up on the hood of a Camaro if you're sober, but you do that when you're intoxicated, right? And so all sorts of examples of crazy things people do when they're drunk, and sex is one of them. The notion that people only have sex when they're sober, it's just nonsensical. And so you have an allegation like that where it's really a he said, she said allegation involving alcohol. That is extraordinarily common in the military. So an investigation will be launched. It'll get up to NCIS, CID, or OSI. In the case we use as Marines, so it'd be NCIS. And the agents are automatically going to believe and assume that the Marine accused is guilty. They're going to absolutely start with the believe the victim or believe the alleged victim. And they're going to go in it with the notion that this Marine or this accused is guilty. Now let's figure out how we can prove that they are guilty. And so they'll use all of that training. They'll use what they learned at FLETC. They'll use what they learned at the Advanced Sexual Assault Training course. They'll use what they learned in the witness interview and in the Reed interrogation course. And they'll use all of these, but they'll use all of these not with an open mindset to prove or disprove the case, but they'll use them to try to prove your client guilty. And, you see it over and over and over again. And oftentimes you see it in these interviews. They'll be interviewing an alleged victim, and what he or she is saying is almost absurd. You're looking at it from an independent perspective, and you're like, there's no way in hell this could have happened this way. But they're, oh yeah, well, tell me more. And what they'll do is they can even say, well, we interviewed a lot of witnesses, and this Marine that you're with was really drunk that night. That's correct, isn't it? And they might not have interviewed anyone, but they're putting information into this alleged victim's mind that this person was really drunk. And they start saying, well, you're a victim of sexual assault. Under the SAPR or the SHARP training that if you have any alcohol, you can't consent. And this is all nonsensical. So they're feeding this notion that you are a victim, and they don't know if you're a victim or not. You may actually be a victim, you may not be, but it's law enforcement's freaking job to go out there and figure it out. But these agents, which is the majority of the agents on that kind of that bell curve we talked about, is the confirmation bias. So then they'll brief the trial counsel, they'll brief the command, and they'll brief them that this Marine or this service member is guilty. The way they interview witnesses is with this confirmation bias. They will find out who the accused former girlfriends are or who he's been dating. And they'll bring them in and they'll say, well, you're aware that he raped so-and-so. Were you aware that he plied this other woman with alcohol and he sexually assaulted her? And we think there are other victims out there. And we want to make sure that you're not a victim of a similar crime. And so has there been a time when the two of you had sex while drinking? Probably, right? So she says, yes, there was. We understand that you're likely a victim too. And this is a serial rapist that's out there. And we need to bring him to justice. And we're going to get you in touch with the victim legal counsel who's going to explain to you all the benefits that are going to be able to, all the programs that are available and all the benefits that are available to victims and survivors of sexual assault. And so now they've created a victim out of whole cloth because of someone he has hooked up with in the past in a fully consensual sexual experience that may have had alcohol. I mean, you can go down and, have a couple of drinks and have sex with someone. Now they've turned her into an alleged victim. And you see cases like this. Well, because of law enforcement, it starts out with one he said, she said allegation. And now you've got 3 victims. If you're watching this and you've got a charge sheet and there's 3 named victims on there, everyone around you, your commands are going to think, oh, this is some serial sexual predator. But the reality is you might have just hooked up with someone while both of you were drinking. Law enforcement had this confirmation bias. They took your phone, ran a cell right on your phone, find out a couple of other girls that you met on Tinder or former girlfriends, brought them in, told them you're a sex predator, and it turned them into victims and now added them to the charge sheet. That's insanity. But that's what's happening. It's a complete and utter misuse of the system, but it's something I see over and over and over again. And frankly, it's not the prosecutors who are, they're the ones who are charging these, but they're brought to the prosecutors by these law enforcement agents. And so these are agents who create victims when there otherwise aren't victims.